we come into this time together, I had a lot of decisions of what I wanted to preach on today. And I figured, what more than to go into Jesus' time with his disciples. And early in this time, it's in Matthew. It's not recorded in John's gospel. It's recorded in the other three. It's Matthew 8, Mark 4, and then Luke 8 as well. And in this time, to give you a little bit of context, what's going on is Jesus is preaching to basically the masses, essentially. And what he's doing is he's telling them a whole bunch of parables. And then he says, I'm going to go away. I'm going to go to the other side of this lake that he's sitting on, because he's going to go preach to the people that are on the other side of this lake. So he's already got the people that are over here, and he's going to go preach to them on the other side. Now on this lake, it was pretty consistent that you would have storms. Now not the storms that we're accustomed to here on Table Rock Lake. They're quite a bit bigger. But if you think of the thunderstorms that we have and sometimes the tornadoes, it's like that of the severity. It's something that you're just used to if you live in Missouri. My mom's from Florida, and she would always tell me that you had hurricanes and how she liked Florida because you got 4 or 5 days notice instead of 15 with tornadoes. But think of that idea of we're just used to it, we sleep through it. Maybe there's a crack of thunder, you wake up, the window's shuttering. It's normal. But in Mark, he gives us one of the most detailed accounts of this story, and it starts in verse 35. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, being Jesus, "Let us go to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There was other boats with him, and a furious swell came up, and the wave broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." And then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." Now, to get an idea of what's going through their head, this is not their first moment with Jesus. They've been with him for quite a bit of time. They've already been called to be in ministry with him. They've heard his teachings. They know who he is. They've likely had some inside jokes with him and the other disciples. They've gained this time together that they're not just acquaintances. They're close friends. So it's interesting that they say, "Who is this?" Because they're thinking, what the heck? Because they live in this Greco-Roman world that Zeus, I can't remember the name of the Roman god, but Zeus was the god of all the storms. Poseidon was the god of the seas. And sure, they're not following that, but they had this idea of they control everything, and that's what the common idea was. And they're thinking, who is this man? Who is this man that this storm is quieting? What power does he possess? Who is he, and why? We need to follow him, but what is going on here? And the first thing I want to point out here is that Jesus was completely human. In this story, it says Jesus was in the stern sleeping on a cushion. Many times in the Gospels, Jesus is noted as sleeping, eating, drinking. He's doing things that humans do. But he is sleeping on a cushion. He's sleeping through the storm. He was a man so much that he looked so plain that you could not tell who he was from anybody else. He didn't look like God. He was a man of his day, some people say. But he was different. In John 1, the Word, the Logos, came and dwelt among us. All the Gospels talk about having this problem with thirst, hunger. The Chosen even makes a joke about it. I laugh when Jesus has the moment with the Samaritan woman, and I bet it's Peter. He says, "Who got you food?" When Jesus is talking about the bread of life that he has. He was completely human, but he was not scared of the human things that we are naturally scared of, like a severe thunderstorm that is swamping your boat. The disciples were scared just like we are, and I want you guys today to put yourself in the disciples' shoes. You're in a boat. Your teacher, your rabbi, the man that is your leader is sleeping on a cushion. He's completely out of it. He's not even paying attention to what is going on. You think you're about to die. See that fear that they're feeling. but see throughout this story and throughout our time together that Jesus is not scared at all. No. In fact, Jesus is sleeping because he is in control completely. Their fears are real, and our fears are too, but Jesus is even closer to us than he was to them. Now, that makes no sense. Jesus was literally sleeping in a boat with them, but if you look at the times of Acts, we can see that we have Jesus indwelling in us. Jerry talked about it, Curtis, when we take Jesus into our hearts, we live different. Jesus is in us. There's something different about us. We're no longer the people of this world. Jesus affects the way that we act, the way that we treat people. When you're sitting in somewhere in public and you get this inkling of, I should go talk to them, I should pray for that person, I should reach out to them. That's the Holy Spirit working in you. That's Jesus being close to you and shaping you to be more like him, to be a light in this world. They don't see it, but Jesus is completely God, and we have to treat him as such. John 14:6, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He's making it clear that he is the only way to heaven. There's a lot of differing ideas between the Jews even of that day of what you had to do to stay ritually clean and how you would get to heaven and how would you follow God. They said God, they said Yahweh. But there was a ton of different ideas of who is going to do what, and you had all of these teachers. But Jesus is making it very clear, none of those teachers matter. I am the teacher. When he says I am, there is such a weight to what he is saying, because he is saying there is nothing above me, nothing before me, nobody rivals me. I am everything that you will ever need, everything that you will ever need to follow. In Matthew 16:13 through 16, Peter declares Jesus is Messiah. He has this moment with Jesus, and Jesus asks him in his playful questioning, he says, well, who do you say I am? Well, and Peter, avoiding the question, says, oh, well, some people say you're Elijah. Some people say you're a prophet. Some people say this or that and the other. And Jesus says, well, who do you say I am? Who do you say Jesus is today? Because for Peter, he said, you are Messiah, you are Lord, you are God. But today, we have to ask ourselves a question. Who is God to us? There's powerful moments in the Bible, more than I could ever express, and some interesting ones too. And we covered this in my Book of Acts class over at Ozark, and it's the story of the 7 sons of Sceva. And to give you an idea, Acts is going on, the apostles are spreading the word, everything is going great for the church. And these guys 7 sons of Sceva, which is a Jewish leader, they're going around and they're performing these exorcisms and they're calling out demons and they're doing these magical works, essentially. And they say it in a certain way. They say, Jesus in whom Paul preaches. Not in Jesus' name, not in God's name, in the Jesus whom Paul preaches. Notice that wording. They don't know Jesus. They probably know Paul or have heard of him likely, but they are just regurgitating what they have been told by Paul. They're not having this emotional moment with God of, you are Lord, let me do your will, Lord. And we see it's an interesting time in this little, because it's in the middle of a chapter. It's just almost thrown in, but we have to sit on that weight of what the heck is going on here, because it's so interesting. But the demons look at the 7 sons and they say, Jesus we know, Paul we've heard of, but who are you? Because they don't have a true faith to them. They sit there and they speak and they preach and they're doing these wonders and they're calling out these demons, but they're not doing it in the right power. They're doing it in a power that they have heard of, that they know of, but they don't know the power. Jesus, in I believe it's Luke, has the moment when he casts out the demons and they call themselves Legion. It's an incredible moment because they recognize his name. They recognize that it's not just a man from somewhere in Israel. It's not just another teacher, not just another rabbi, not just another guy that is doing these works. It is the Lord. Even demons recognize his name. We have to as well. If Satan and the people that are doing his bidding are recognizing his power, why are we not? If they see how good and how great he is, we have to do the same and even more. Now, these 7 sons, they're walking and serving Jesus in an interesting way. And do not hear this as me in any condemnation way, because I do the same thing. But they're living the life of Jesus how most Americans do. You go to church on Sunday. You give your 10% when you want to give it. You pray when times get tough. You do all of the things. You say that you're a Christian. You do everything that checks the boxes that shows that you are doing the right thing, but you're not living for Jesus. You're saying, oh, my pastor told me about Jesus. Oh, yeah, I know Jesus. I heard about him one time. Oh, I said a Bible verse at camp one time and I got a piece of candy. I did this thing. And now I'm not saying don't get up here and preach and do all of that. That's not what we're called to, but we have to see that to follow Jesus, you have to know him intimately. It's like a marriage. You have to. It's like that of the relationship with your spouse. You have to trust what they do, that they are going to do what's best for you and what's best for them and what's best for the marriage itself. When you wake up, you have to trust that your wife didn't poison your coffee, even though she might have wanted to. But you trust them to make the right decisions. You have to have that relationship with Christ as well. You see, when you get married, it's new and it's fun and you're trying to figure out everything, and then there's rough patches, obviously. But when you make a decision for the betterment of that relationship, you both have to realize it is for the betterment of that relationship and for the relationships and the things that will come out of that. When Jesus makes a decision for our life, we have to see that he is not doing it for his own accord. He's doing it for the will of the Father. And if you live with Jesus long enough, you will see that life just doesn't make sense when you're with Jesus. And it's a good thing, though. I was talking with my youth pastor this past couple of months, just, hey, how is life? How's everything going? And he was sharing with me a little bit of his financial life, and not the details, but he was telling me that everything just makes sense now. It makes sense, but it doesn't, in fact. Before he came back to church, he was making really good money, but his marriage was failing. All of the bills weren't paid. Life was incredibly tough. He was sinking. His ship was being overrun with water, and he was crying out to nobody because he didn't know who to cry out to. But he told me that now that he is following Jesus and is doing it incredibly well, he's doing incredible things. He said, everything doesn't make sense, but it makes sense. I make less money than I ever have before, yet all of my bills are paid. My marriage is incredible. My children are doing amazing in school. And he just recently bought a new car for his expanding family. It doesn't make sense on this side of the pond with Jesus, but it just makes sense. We in life have the golden ticket. If you ever seen Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, you get the golden ticket with the chocolate bar. We have that golden ticket of life. The life that I was just describing, that we live so differently, that we have so many different things that bless us. So many moments in our life that it just works out. I remember before I started college, it was maybe a week before I was going to move in, and the classes started maybe 2 weeks after that. I realized that college was a little bit too expensive for what me and my family and I could afford. So we had to take out some student loans. And I was really stressed for that whole week. I was wondering, how is this going to work? I'm supposed to move in. They're going to be banging on my dorm room door, asking me for the money. I'm going to get kicked out of college. I'm not going to be able to afford it. It's going to be awful. But I remember sitting on my front porch, having a conversation with my mom, saying, why are you not stressed about this? Like, it doesn't make sense. We're not going to get it done. And if you ever meet my mom and you have a long conversation with her, I'm sorry, Mom, she's the stressor of the family. She's the one that is always worrying about what needs to be done, what needs to be paid, where am I not doing something, what needs to be done. And even when she doesn't have something to stress about, she's stressing about the things that she is likely not stressing about. I hear the nervous laughter because y'all are probably agreeing with me on that. But she told me one of the most harrowing things that I've ever heard. And it was, the Lord is taking you this far. He is not going to leave you now. He's taken you this far. He will not leave you now. And he didn't. As you can tell, I'm still in college and everything is working out beautifully. But in that moment, all I had to do, I was sitting there saying, Lord, it's not going to work. How are you going to... I was crying out, Lord, do you not love me? Are you not going to help me? You've taken me this far. You called me into ministry, a life that I didn't want before you called me. And even I was fighting him at that moment too, of even if it was what I wanted to do. And I was saying, Lord, how are you going to make it work? And he just did. He calmed the storm. He put a little bit of a choke in my throat and said, do you have any faith? You see, in all three of the gospel moments, there's three things that are very detailed in every single one of them. There's a little bit of difference in them, but there's three things that are detailed very specifically. It says that Jesus was sleeping. It says that very plainly in Matthew. In Mark, it said he was in the stern on a cushion. And then in Luke, it says Jesus fell asleep. He's pretty simple with how he says things. In Matthew, it says, ye of little faith. Like, you have no faith. What are you doing? In Mark, it says, quiet, be still. And then, why are you so afraid? You still have no faith. And then in Luke, it says Jesus rebukes the wind and asks, where is your faith? Every time in the three Gospels that it is mentioned, Jesus is very clear about A, his power, and B, the lack of faith that his disciples have for him. He's a little crass when he says it, but it's an honest thing that we have to accept. We have such little faith that when things get tough, when money gets tight, when health gets burdened, we so quickly question, Lord, where did you go? You were there with me the whole time. But I think back to when I started riding a bike. And I had the training wheels on, and my dad was teaching me how to ride it, and then he took the training wheels off, and then he would stand right behind me, make sure I didn't fall. I remember the first time that I did it by myself and he wasn't helping me, and I'm like, Dad, where are you? Dad, you back there? He was like 30 feet behind me. He was probably like, he's got it at this point, he'll be fine. If he falls, it'll be okay. But that's not the Lord. When we call out to him, and he doesn't answer, that is not him saying, nope, no more. Go on, have fun. No, it's him sitting there. I broke it. Are we good? I guess we're good. It's not him being far away saying, oh, nope, you got it. Take it from here. Nope, we're good. Nope, keep going, we're fine. He's sitting right there with you. All right, hey, I've taught you how to do it before, just like we've practiced. Just like we've done it. Because our walk with Christ is going to be challenge after challenge, turmoil after turmoil, hardship after hardship. And it slowly builds up to we just see where the Lord is calling us, and we go because we know that's where he wants us to go with blind faith, thinking, if that's what I'm supposed to do, I'm supposed to do that. Blind faith is so accurately described in our lives, but in Matthew 9:22, Jesus shows the absolute power that he holds, especially when somebody with blind faith comes to him. There's a detailed moment of this woman who had been bleeding for 12 years. So for 12 years, she was ritually unclean. For 12 years, no going into the synagogue, no prayers with people, no giving of any sacrifice, no hugs, no kisses, no fist bumps, no high fives. Everybody would have been treating her like she was radioactive and trying to get away from her as much as they could because they didn't want to be even near her. The Pharisees wouldn't even go near her. The religious people that are supposed to love everybody and be sharing the word of God wouldn't even go near them for fear of being unclean too. But in Matthew, this woman, it says, had so much faith that if she even touched the hem of Jesus' garment, the end of it, the tassel on the end of it, that she would be cleaned. She would be fixed, ridden of all of her diseases and all of her problems. And in Matthew 22, she is. And Jesus says, "Who did that?" She says, "It was me." And he says, "You're clean. Go live a sinless life." That is the faith that we have to have, ladies and gentlemen. That is the faith that Jesus is so powerfully telling us, is that we have this faith, that we have to live with it, that we just need to be still, be with him, know that he is Lord, and live our lives accordingly to it. But as you guys have probably realized, is Jesus' presence, especially in this story, does not prevent a storm. It's a simple explanation. Oh, Jesus is in the boat with the storm. Storms happen with Jesus. But we need to have this idea that even when Jesus is with us, storms will happen. And even when we're not with Jesus, there will be calm. But if you have ever talked to somebody that is a Christian, that is not just going to church on every Sunday to look good, but they are living it out, they have that blind faith of Jesus, wherever you call me, I will go, and things get rocky, the storm gets big, the waves are crashing in on their boat, and life does not look like it should be working, they have this joy to them. This moment of, I don't know how it's going to work, but I know, Lord, you will make it work, so I'm just going to know that you're going to make it work. Or on the complete other side, if you ask somebody who is not somebody of faith, completely just living how the world sees fit, living how they want to live, and something goes wrong, something even minute, oh my gosh, it's like all hell broke loose. Everything is going wrong. I don't know what to do. They're like a chicken with their head cut off. They're running around screaming, what's going on? Something is messing with me. I seen something on a friend of mine that I went to school with, and they were posting about some athletic competition that they'd gotten in the finals to, and they were really nervous, and they said prayers of any kind would be welcome. And I'd known that person and had a few conversations with them, and I knew they weren't of faith. And I kind of chuckled, and not in a bad way, but I was saying, you're not of faith, and you still see the power of prayer. These people that don't live in Jesus' name, they don't live in his light, they still recognize the power of him. Do you see the power that we hold when we are with him? We are able to pray to somebody who is outside of time, outside of space, is not guarded and messed with by the powers of this world. He's able to influence anything that he wants. You see, when people are with Jesus, they weather the storm better. The storm does not overwhelm them. They are not shouting, Jesus, do you love us? I encourage you to find this. There's a painting of this story of Jesus in the boat, and it's Jesus in the stern, and he's sitting there. And there's people around him. And then there's people at the front. They're on the complete other side. And there's this gap there. There's just a little dead space. And what this artist is conveying, and on their faces, they're calm. When they're next to Jesus, they're calm. I mean, sure, they're not dancing with joy saying, "Oh Lord, I love the storm that's just raging in on us and it feels like we're going to die." But they know that with Jesus, they are not going to perish. They're going to have everlasting life, as Romans says so eloquently. But the people that are away from Jesus, there's fear on their face. They're the ones that are questioning, "Lord, what are you going to do? Why have you forsaken us? Do you not love us?" That Jesus is asking, "Oh, ye of little faith, where is your faith? Do you not know me at all?" But at the end of this story, in each of them, they ask themselves a rhetorical question that they don't have the answer to, and we don't get the answer to either in this story, but we get it in the Gospels and in the epistles and all of the Bible if you read it. It's, who is this man? And not just who is Jesus, the Son of God. It is, who is this man that would love us so much, that would protect us so much, that has power over everything. You know, when I think of that idea, I think of a story I heard of a Christian family in India. And it was a mom and a father and a son and a daughter. And the father and his daughter were martyred. They were killed by the extremists of, I can't remember what faith it was, but they were killed for being Christians and not confessing that Jesus was not Lord. They confessed that Jesus was Lord, and they were killed for it. And I remember this story that I read. It was this reporter. The reporter got in their face and said, "What are you going to do? How are you going to mend this? How are you living with this?" It was this widow and her son. And you know what they said? They sang, "Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because he lives, I know he holds the future. And because he holds the future, that is because he lives." It's only because he lives that we are able to live in this world of such brokenness, and we have to do it with faith. You know, see, if you hear nothing from my sermon, if you get nothing out of this, hear this right here. People that are close to Jesus weather the storm better because they learn who Jesus truly is. They learn that he is a redeemer. He's a healer. The woman with the 12 years of bleeding. He's the name above all names. He's the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. The man who lived perfectly. A man who lived in a human body with all of its imperfections and all of its problems and all of the things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. He was a carpenter, so he had a harsh life, so he probably had health issues, probably had a little bit of arthritis at the very least. He was a man who made the blind to see. He made the dumb to talk. He made the dead to live. Lazarus was dead for 4 days. They're very clear of, no, he's decomposing. It smells terrible. He's dead. It's not like, oh, he just took a really long nap. No. Jesus has this power, and he has this power because we have faith in him. So whether Jesus is the Father that accepts you home today, the lifelong friend that you were always able to talk to when things got tough, or he was the surgeon for your soul that made you love people when you never even could love yourself, the merciful one, or the one who called you and you ran towards him because he came and found you in the mud, in everything that you were doing. And he grabbed you like a little lamb and said, I have found my sheep. I have rescued my sheep from sin. Whatever he is today, let him be that for you. Let him be the light of your life, and let that light show through this world. Will you pray with me? Father, we come to you and we give you thanks. Father, being on this path with you is an incredible blessing, but Lord, it is incredibly tough at times. Father, living in this broken, messed up world, so often we question if you are even with us. But Father, let our faith be grown and tested so that we may know that you are with us always. that because you live, all fear is gone. Everything is made perfect, Father. That we are able to follow you, and you are able to bless us, and that we are able to live in a sinful world. We are able to live without sin. We thank you for your sacrifice, that we are able to live so perfectly. In your name we pray. Amen.